All right, I have a niece. Her name is Eva, and she just turned, she's about to turn 16 years old. We had her birthday party last Saturday, and she met us at the car with a boy, and she said, "Hey, Tay." She still calls me Tay Tay, and she still calls Sarah Rah Rah. And so she said, "Tay Tay Rah Rah, this is my boyfriend Seth." And I was like, all right, well, he can get you a Starbucks gift card, and I'll keep this one. But I'm just kidding. But yeah, we got her like we do every year since she was way too young to be drinking coffee. We have always gotten her a Starbucks gift card, and like 20 bucks are on it. So that's what, like a trip and a half to Starbucks. And actually, I've been told it's 7 Brew now. It's not Starbucks anymore. So I don't know. But imagine I give her that gift card, and she looks at it and she says, "This is way too much. Let me help you out." And she gets $5 out of her pocket and hands it to me. I would just like to help you out. That's way too much of a gift. Let me give you some money back. Like, what would I say to that? If that happened to you, what are you saying? Some of y'all might say, "Thank you," actually. That's half my paycheck. No. Times are tough, Chuck. Times are tough. But I would see it as insulting. Like, it's 20 bucks, you know? Like, even if I got her like something that costs $500, she's like, "No, let me help you out. Here's $100." I would see it as insulting, right? Why? Because it's a gift. I'm giving it to you because I'm giving this for you. It is a gift. Now, it's kind of a silly analogy because that probably would not happen in real life, but that's kind of the picture Paul has been painting throughout this entire letter, right? He says in other writings like Ephesians chapter 2, in verse 8, he says, "For you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourself, it is a" what? "Gift from God. It's not from works, so that no one can boast." And now the people of Galatia have been swayed by this false teaching. We've been covering it for 8 weeks now. He's telling them that when you are falling into this false teaching, you are essentially saying to God, your gift is way too much. I have to contribute. I have to contribute. I can't have it just be this gift. I also have to contribute to it. And that's where we can get into a lot of trouble. Because remember, these Judaizers, they weren't denying Jesus. They said Jesus existed. They said he died on the cross. Yes, his death went a long way for us. But what were they doing? They were adding to Jesus. Yeah, they said that Jesus is important. He's just not enough. He's important, but he's not enough. And Paul's been saying this since all the way back in chapter 1. If you add anything to Jesus for salvation, you've lost the plot on the gospel. If you have to add anything to Jesus for your salvation, you've missed the entire point. He's argued all the way back in the Old Testament, talking about Abraham. We just talked about Abraham a lot last week as well. He said, Abraham was justified by faith, and we are justified by faith. The process did not change. It's always been faith. It's always been the grace of God. He talked about the law, where the law served a purpose for a time, but it was ultimately what? Temporary. And now, because of the grace of God, because of what Jesus has done, we are adopted as sons and daughters of the Most High God. And so now, when we get into chapter 5, we get into the last section of the letter. And this is the application, where he gets into the practical. Remember, chapters 1 and 2 are the personal, where he talks about this is why I'm writing the letter. Chapters 3 and 4, he gets theological and doctrinal. That's another word we can use there, where he goes back into the Old Testament and says, hey, this has always been true. Let me prove it to you. And now chapters 5 and 6, the application, he says, now, if all this is true, here's what we do with it. Think like this is a letter. It takes 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes to read through this letter. That's about how long my sermons on Wednesday night are supposed to be. They never are, but they're supposed to be around 20 minutes. And every sermon, 3 points, of course, but if you never apply it, then all we're doing is creating top-heavy Christians. Does that make sense? I don't ever want to feel like I'm creating top-heavy Christians that have a lot of knowledge but don't know what to do with that knowledge. Every sermon, every letter in the Bible, everything you see from Scripture is applied. This isn't just so that we will know cool facts. This is for us to begin to go out and be Jesus to everyone we encounter, right? And so chapters 5 and 6 start answering that question. How do we actually live this out? And one thing that Paul wants to strike at the heart of every Galatian believer is this question. Like, why would you go back? Do you know what you're risking if you go back? Are you actually counting the cost? Are you thinking through this decision? These false teachers, they've been telling you, you got to go back to the law. You got to keep doing sacrifices. You got to get circumcised. Do you really understand the weight you're putting on yourself when you go back to that? He reminds them in verse 1. This is where we ended last week, where he said, "For freedom Christ set us free. Stand firm then, and don't submit again to a yoke of slavery." Don't submit again to a yoke of slavery. Don't go back to that. You were set free because of what Christ has done, and now you're choosing to go back and put the burden back on you. Are you really counting the cost? Do you really understand what that means? This is where we get into the verses tonight. Verse 2, he says, "Take note, I, Paul, am telling you that if you get yourself circumcised, Christ will not benefit you at all." Christ will be of no help to you, is what other translations might say there. Of no help to you. You have to count the cost before you do something. Before you make big decisions in your life, you have to count the cost. You have to look, okay, what are the benefits? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages, right? Before Sarah and I decided to buy a house for the first time, we had to look at our finances. Can we actually do this? Can we make this work? Yeah? When I was younger in ministry, I heard an illustration. I've probably told it to you guys before, but it's one of my favorite illustrations of all time. There was an architect who was commissioned to design a library that would go in downtown where he lived. And they wanted it to be the most grand library the world has ever seen. They said, price is no object. There's no number we'll say no to. Just design whatever you want. We will build it. And so he said, all right, bet. Let me go in. And I'm going to make this ridiculously expensive and nice and glorious. People will come from all over the world to see this library. And he created it. He made the drawings and all, and then he submitted it to the town. They said, all right, only $12 billion, let's go. I'm kidding. It's just a fake number. Those numbers don't exist. So not to us, real, normal people. But they said, yes, we'll build this library. And they built it. They had a grand opening. And yes, people from all over the world came to see this library. But something happened after it was built. About a year or two later, people looked at it and they were like, isn't the library, wasn't the front door to the library this high off the ground? Now it's this high off the ground? And then a year later, it was here, and here, and then here, and then here. And 10 years later, the library had sunk so far into the ground that it had to be condemned and torn down. The most beautiful library the world has ever seen, 10 years, and they had to tear it down. Do you know why it sank? Do you know why it had to be condemned? Because when the architect made his design, he didn't account for the cost or the weight of the books. And when they filled the library with books, it was too much weight for the foundation. And it started to sink it year after year to where something so beautiful had to be torn down. And this is what I see when I read Galatians 5. We look at it and we see, okay, There's, a lot of rules to follow, but some people might have seen the law as actually easier than following the Spirit. Because at least with the law, I can see the checklist. Those are all the laws I got to follow. Okay, I'll do that. Now, but the other side, you're telling me I just got to follow the Spirit. What does that mean? And they don't have a checklist anymore, and they don't know what to do with it. Whether you think it or not, subconsciously, we prefer a checklist. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But when you bring that into your relationship with God, when you make your means of salvation all about a checklist, what's that doing? It's putting all the burden back on you, right? It's the yoke of slavery that Paul's talking about. I'm putting it all on me. What's that going to do after time? You might be able to do it for a little bit, but what's it going to do? It's going to weigh you down, and you're going to sink lower and lower and lower. Because a lot of times when we're making decisions, we make impulse decisions because we only think about right here, right now. We don't think about 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Paul is saying you have to count the cost. You have to think about what you're doing. Is circumcision evil all of a sudden? No. Can it take the place of Christ? Also no. It cannot. Paul says we need to be worried about a different kind of circumcision, where he says in Romans chapter 2, it is of the circumcision of the heart that we need to be focused on. The mark of a believer is not what man has done to your body. The mark of a believer is what God has done to your heart. I wish I came up with that. I'm sorry, I did not. It's not when your actions change. It's when your priorities change. So many kids in youth ministry, they're focused on just changing their actions. I'm like, until you change your heart, you can change your actions all you want. But you're not going to really feel any different. God is worried about the heart. He says, I'm telling you in verse 2, if you get yourself circumcised, Christ will not benefit you at all. Again, I testify to every man who gets himself circumcised, he is obligated to do the entire law. He's saying if you choose this path to become righteous, you now have to be perfect. Not just obedient, but perfectly obedient. That's what he said in chapter 3, where he mentioned the law and said it was a curse that you put on you. If you're making it more about the law than about Jesus, you're putting a curse on you that you can never get off yourself. It's like trying to tightrope walk between two skyscrapers with no net below to catch you, no harness that you're wearing, no cables. You're just tightrope walking across two skyscrapers. Now imagine you start going and you're like, okay, I can't feel my legs already, but we got to get across. You get 75% of the way before you fall. Is that good? I mean, you made it a long way, right? It's actually pretty impressive. You made it 75% of the way. You're still dead, but you made it 3/4 of the way before you died. That's not right. You could get 99% of the way and then slip once, dead. That's what he's saying. It's like trying to tightrope walk between two skyscrapers. Missing perfection by one step, one command, places you guilty in front of a holy, perfect, and righteous God who has to punish sin. Right? This is a scary place to be. And that's what Paul's getting at here. He said, James said in chapter 2, verse 10, he said, whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point becomes accountable for all of it. You break one law, you might as well have broken all 600 of them. And that's the problem with legalism, is it will always ask for more. I have to be perfect because it's all on me. Now, is obeying the Word of God legalism? I need to make sure y'all know this. Is being obedient to the Bible legalism? No, it's not, okay? Is holding others accountable legalism? No, it's not. But if your acceptance is depending more on your performance than Jesus's, that's when it becomes legalism. It's when you when you start placing restrictions that aren't in the Bible on other believers, and you start questioning their salvation based on what they wore to church that day. That's legalism. Do you see where I'm getting at here? If your acceptance depends on your performance, how much performance is enough? You'll never know, because legalism will always ask for more. He keeps going in verse 4. You who are trying to be justified by the law are alienated from Christ. You have fallen from grace. This verse often does scare Christians because we see fallen from grace and we're like, wait, are you saying I can lose my salvation? Are you saying I can be fully saved and then mess up one time? And Jesus is like, yeah, I know my blood covered you then, but like it doesn't now. See you later. Goodbye. We see this verse and we get scared about that. But is he meaning to say that they lost their salvation here? No, he's not. He's saying to fall from grace here means you have left grace as the means of justification. Falling from grace means you forgot what grace was all about. You ran away from the way and started trying to pave your own way. And he's saying, it's like, I'm full of illustrations tonight. It's like you're drowning and you get rescued from that by a rescue boat. The Coast Guard comes and saves you. And then you get halfway back to shore and you're like, it's all right, guys, I'll take it from here. I'll swim back to shore. That's crazy, right? Nobody would do that. When we look at this, when he's talking about falling from grace, it's not saying if you stumble, you're done, you're gone. That's not what he's saying, okay? The issue here is he's saying you've stopped trusting Christ and you've started trusting yourself. That's what he's saying when you've fallen from grace. You stopped relying on grace and you started relying on your performance. Verse 5, for we eagerly await through the Spirit by faith the hope of righteousness. We eagerly wait. There's an expectation here. That's a very strong word. He's saying we're not anxiously trying to earn righteousness. We are eagerly awaiting righteousness. That means, yeah, I don't look exactly like Jesus right now. In fact, I look pretty far from him. But I eagerly await the day that I do look like Jesus, because I know that he who began a good work in me will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ, right? That's in Philippians chapter 1. I know it's going to happen. The Spirit is in me and pointing me to Jesus every day. And there is hope now that I will look like Jesus someday. And I eagerly await that. I have confidence. I don't have panic when I stumble. I know that I can still have hope. I mean, yeah, I might not be Jesus's twin yet, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying with the beard, but it's not really working yet. I'm not his twin, but I'm a lot closer today than I was yesterday. And by his grace, I'm going to be closer tomorrow than I am today. Every day after that, there will be a step towards that righteousness that Jesus has and that Jesus has given to me. Every day, I eagerly await that hope of righteousness. But what's happening here? The people are saying, I want to be righteous right now. I want to feel like I did this. I can't wait for that. I want to look like Jesus right now. So I think it's easier to follow 600 laws than just trust in what he's already done. And they forget the righteousness of Jesus, as soon as you put your faith in him, that righteousness of Jesus is yours. You already have it. You're striving for something that you already have. It's wild. It's wild. Verse 6, for in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision accomplishes anything. What matters is faith working through love. Okay? He makes it clear through all of his writings, and we see this throughout the entire Bible, that it's faith alone that saves. But faith never stays alone, okay? Faith will always produce something in your life. We're going to talk about this next week with the fruit of the Spirit. But one fruit that he talks about early on in chapter 5 is what? Faith working through what? Love. Faith working through love. The faith will produce love. Verse 7, he says, you were running well. Who prevented you from being persuaded regarding the truth? You were running well. We see his heart come back out again, right? The heart of Paul's making another appearance. And I see this so often in youth ministry where I'm talking to kids and I'm telling them exactly this. You were running so well. Like literally 1 week ago, I told you I'm so proud of you. And then 4 days later, you make the most boneheaded decision I've ever seen you make. You were doing so good. You were running so well. Who prevented you from this truth? Who swayed you? The Greek here is almost like the Olympics had already started by this point. It's kind of crazy. And there were Olympics like all the time, and they had their track and field events. They already had, all that happening in this period. So Paul, using a sports type of analogy, isn't really that out of the culture that was taking place there. And the picture he's drawing here, who prevented you from being persuaded, it's like you're running in a race and another runner suddenly steps in front of you and blocks your path. That's kind of the picture he is drawing here. Someone's cutting into your lane and hindering you from keeping going on that path. And that's one important note to make about false teachers, is they don't just teach wrong ideas, they block your progress. They stunt your growth. Paul's saying, who got in front of you? Who persuaded you? Verse 8, this persuasion does not come from the one who calls you. He's saying this didn't come from God. It didn't come from God. This isn't what he spoke. It's someone twisting the truth. This is something that has happened the entire Bible, all the way back to Genesis 3. Remember, when the devil came to Adam and Eve as the serpent, he didn't say God doesn't exist. What did he say? Did God really say? He's twisting the truth. And my boy Warren Wiersbe says, truth twisted is more dangerous than truth denied. Truth twisted is more dangerous than truth denied. Verse 9, a little leaven leavens the whole batch of dough. We all know what that means, right? So we can move on. No? Okay. Cool. A little leaven leavens the whole batch of dough. I'm not going to pretend to be a baker here. Sorry. I do know a baker, but oh man, y'all even know how good that was. Y'all, I almost had the fire department called on us making a grilled cheese one time. So like, I don't. We'll talk after, okay? This isn't the time for that. But in my study of bakery science, I have found that just a small amount of yeast will make a whole loaf of bread rise, okay? But just one little leaven, what does he say? It can leaven the whole dough. He says, and he kind of draws the parallel here to the legalistic teaching. That's what a little bit of legalistic teaching will do. It will quickly spread. It will infiltrate the hearts and minds of believers until the entire church is contaminated. No church will drift into legalism overnight. It starts small, in little decisions, and then it grows and grows and festers and contaminates until the whole thing is distorted. And so that's why it's so important for us to be taking care, guarding our own hearts. We talked about this just last week. So many people in this room are in positions of leadership and authority and influence. We have to be guarding our hearts and our personal walk, not just for us, but for the people that God has trusted us with. That's why I have to guard my walk so personally, because I see way too many times, I see a pastor fall, and then what happens to his congregation? A lot of them fall too. A lot of them leave because they realize I was following a person, but the person I was following was my pastor and it wasn't Jesus. And that is because of something small that goes unchecked for years and years and years, and it grows until it blows up. That's why Paul's saying you have to nip this in the bud right now. You got to stop it right now. Verse 10, I myself am persuaded in the Lord you will not accept any other view. He's confident right now, right? He's saying, hey, I trust that you're going to kick this out. He said, I'm persuaded you will not accept any other view. But whoever it is that is confusing you will pay the penalty. Look at that shepherd stepping up, right? It's like David saying in Psalm 23, he says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What else does a rod and a staff do? It wards off the things trying to steal the sheep from the shepherd, right? Sometimes a pastor has to protect their flock. And this is what Paul's doing here. He does not like these Judaizers, right? Doesn't like them at all. Verse 11. Now, brothers and sisters, if I still preach circumcision, why am I still persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been abolished. This verse right here is kind of by itself before he keeps going in verse 12, because he's squashing a rumor here, okay? It's likely that the Judaizers were tricking the Galatians by telling them Paul was on their side, on the Judaizers' side, okay? They were saying that he was on their side and preaching circumcision just like they were. They were like, hey, Paul would agree with us. And Paul's like, absolutely not, actually. He makes it clear that he's teaching no such thing. He said, if I'm teaching circumcision, why am I still getting thrown in prison all the time? If I'm in agreement with the Judaizers, why do I still get beaten once a week? Yeah? Why am I being persecuted all the time if these people are saying I agree with them? Think about it. It makes no sense. The reason I am being persecuted is because the cross is offensive to them. And he says, if I'm preaching circumcision, the offense of the cross has been abolished. What does that mean? It means they're not threatened by the cross anymore if it's still up to us. If I'm telling them, hey, 99.9999999% perfection on your performance, not good enough. Judaizers did not like that. The people around did not like that. And that's why Paul was being persecuted for all of this, because of the offense of the cross. Think about it. You go to a non-believer today, and you can talk to them about a lot of things with God, and they'll say, yeah, I believe in a higher power, all this stuff. Yeah, I think it's all possible. As soon as you start talking about Jesus and the cross, there's a certain tension that shows up, because there is an offense of the cross to the unbeliever. There's something that comes up when you start talking about Jesus, and they like what he taught, but they don't like how he died. They don't like the fact that he rose from the dead. There is offense in the cross. That's why the disciples. That's why Paul, that's why so many in the church were persecuted. Because those people that were still attached to the law and so attached to Moses and the Old Testament and all that, they made the cross a stumbling block. If you read 1 Peter, this is what Peter talks about a lot, that Christ is a stumbling block for so many people. It's a great offense. And if Paul's saying that if you get saved, you must be circumcised, then the offense of the cross, where is it? It's gone. Paul was saying just the opposite of what the Judaizers were trying to start a rumor with, and this makes him very angry. You want to know how angry he got? You want to know? You don't? Nick wants to know, so I'll tell him. Verse 12. He says, I wish those who are disturbing you might also let themselves be mutilated. Does anybody have a word other than mutilated at the end of verse 12? Huh? Emasculated. Yeah. There's a word that starts with a C.
Where are we? Verse 12?
Verse 12. Yeah. There's a word in English that is what Paul is saying here. He's saying, I wish they would be castrated. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. You smell what I'm stepping in. Okay? Paul's saying, I wish these people would be castrated, emasculated, mutilated. That's one of the strongest statements Paul ever makes. Okay? But why is he saying exactly that? Okay? Why is that the example he goes to? Why is that his method of wanting to do away with the false teaching? Think about, and I need us to be kind of mature in this part of the conversation, okay? So when that happens to a person, what is that person now unable to do? Reproduce, okay? A person who has been emasculated, taken that reproductive organ away, they can no longer reproduce, okay? Cannot have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. How does that tie in? He's saying that if we're not careful, these false teachers will have sons in the faith, grandsons in the faith, and this will keep growing and growing and festering. He's saying we have to make sure, like the little leaven that he talks about, we got to make sure that it is cut right now to where this idea cannot reproduce, because we cannot have this division in the church. Paul passionately defends the unity of the Spirit. That's in Ephesians chapter 4. We talked about it last summer on Sundays. The unity of the Spirit. We have to be unified, which means we have to be looking for areas of division in the church, and as soon as we find them, we have to squash them so that they do not reproduce. Not the people, but the false teaching, right? We have to make sure that this does not continue. He keeps going in verse 13. For you were called to be free. That's a callback to chapter 5, verse 1. For freedom, Christ set us free. That's what he says. For you were called to be free, brothers and sisters. Only don't use this freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but serve one another through love. This is a question Paul answers in Romans. People are asking, if I'm free from the law, if grace is covering me, does that mean I can just sin and do whatever I want and then just go to God whenever I feel like it, seek forgiveness, and I'm good, slate clean, I can go sin some more? That's not the freedom that he has called us into. That's not the freedom Christ has given us. He says, don't use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, as an opportunity to sin more. This word opportunity, it's another military word, okay? It's talking about a base of operations or a launching point. What he's saying here is he's saying, don't let freedom become a headquarter of sin. Don't let this freedom think I got license and I'm launched now into doing whatever I want to do. Instead, what does he say? Don't use this opportunity, this freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but what? Serve one another through love. That word serve is very interesting. It's doulouete. And that is where the root word is doulos, which is the word slave. Now, this seems like a contradiction because chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, he's saying, don't be enslaved to this. Now he's saying, enslave yourselves to one another. Is he contradicting himself here? How do we make sense of this? It's a paradox. The gospel frees us from slavery to ourselves so that we can willingly become servants to one another in love. Do you see that? The law makes me a slave to myself because it's all on me. But the gospel takes that burden off, and now I can willingly choose to serve another person in love. That's how we are to view our relationship with each other as brothers and sisters. That's how I view how I'm supposed to treat my wife in marriage, how I'm supposed to treat my daughters at home. I have been taken off a huge burden from my shoulders, so now I am able to actually serve the people around me because I'm not so focused on myself anymore. Now I can actually look for opportunities to be Jesus to someone. Serve one another through love. Jesus modeled this in the best way in John 13, where the night before he died, under unbelievable stress, where he would later sweat literal drops of blood. What's he doing just a couple hours before that? He's washing his disciples' feet. On that night where highest stress possible, the wrath of God, the entire wrath of God for all humanity is about to be on me. What is he doing with his last night alive? Pouring into his disciples, washing their feet, having communion with them, setting them up, saying, hey, when I leave, it's going to be okay. There's another helper coming, the Holy Spirit. This is the mentality we are to live with. No matter what's going on in life, I'm looking for opportunities to serve those around me. And he keeps going in verse 14. For the whole law is fulfilled in one statement. Love your neighbor as yourself. The law says it's all on you. The gospel makes you stop thinking about you. I think that makes sense. Did that make sense, Ryan? Exactly. The law puts it all on you. The gospel says you need to stop thinking about you. Yeah? He says the entire law fulfilled in one statement. Love your neighbor as yourself. Because if all of us were really honest with ourselves, we love ourselves a lot. We choose ourselves a lot. We make decisions based on ourselves a lot. And Paul's saying that level of priority is what you need to show to other people as well. Love your neighbor as if they were yourself. Love your neighbor as if your life depends on it. The legalists were obsessing over hundreds of rules, but Jesus, and now Paul, is summarizing it all in love. You want to do everything that's in that law? All you need is love. Not your love, but the love of God that he gives you through his Holy Spirit. It's that word fulfilled. The whole law is fulfilled. That word there is very long, and I will mess it up if I try to say it. but the verb tense it's in is in the perfect tense, which means it's completed but still has ongoing results. Kind of like marriage. On July 7th, 2012, my marriage with Sarah was finalized. It still has ongoing results today, 14 years later. Still, it's completed with ongoing results. It's like Jesus on the cross. He said, it is what? Finished. The Greek there is telestai. If I ever get a tattoo, it's probably that, but I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah, we'll do it next week. What is he saying there, though? That means the work of atonement has been completed, yeah? The work of salvation is completed in that moment, but the effects of that work continue on forever. There's a moment where you're saved and your eternal destination changes in a moment. That's pretty cool. From eternity separated from God to eternity with God as your Father. In that moment, it changes. But for the rest of your life, you see effects of that salvation. Yeah? Fulfilled. You are simultaneously full and being filled. That's what fulfilled means, if you're wondering. Jesus' work on the cross. Why did God even send his son? John 3:16, because he so what? Loved the world. Love accomplishes what rule keeping never could. Verse 15, last verse tonight. He says, but if you bite and devour one another, watch out, or you will be consumed by one another. Think about the three verbs there. Bite, devour, consume. Increasingly more dangerous, right? It starts small, little nibbles, little bites, and eventually you'll be consuming each other if you let this false teaching continue to spread. Right now, it might not be causing that many divisions. Eventually, you will have to consume one another because you can't get over this disagreement. It goes from love to biting to devouring to consuming, and it can happen rather quickly. That language there is suggesting like wild animals tearing each other apart. One of the commentaries I read said this is what it looks like. This is the process. Legalism almost always creates comparison. Comparison creates competition. Competition destroys community. But when you rely on grace, grace creates a family. And so to kind of wrap it up, I read an illustration that goes along really well with this passage. So I'm just gonna read it to you, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah. Imagine you've been invited to the White House for dinner. How about it? A handwritten invitation arrives with your name on it. Security already has your name when you get to the door. Your seat is reserved, your meal has been prepared, and everything has been paid for. But when you pull up to the gate, instead of walking through the entrance, you stop a Secret Service officer and say, "I'd like to mow the lawn first." The officer looks confused, and you insist, "No, I couldn't possibly come in until I've earned it." So you spend the next 8 hours mowing. Finally, exhausted, sweaty, and covered in grass, you walk back to the gate and say, "All right, have I earned my seat now?" To which the officer responds, "The event ended 4 hours ago. Why are you still here?" Again, it's a silly illustration, but that's what the life of a believer looks like when you put it more on you. You have been given an invitation into the family of God, once a spiritual orphan, now a son and daughter of the living God, the creator of the universe. And you choose to say, thank you, but I'm going to try to earn it. Something that's already been done for you. I'm going to try to earn it. And you spend your entire life trying to earn it instead of walking in freedom. And you get to the end of your life and you say, all right, did I earn it? And God says, it was never about you earning it. You just wasted your life trying to earn what I already gave you. And I don't want to get to the end of my life and feel like I've wasted it. I don't want to get to the end of my life in at least 90 years from now and look back and say, like, what was I doing? Instead of being a father and helping my children grow up in the Lord, I was putting all the weight on me instead of just resting in who God is and trying to show my kids who God is. I'm trying to put all this on my back. And when you do that, you are missing opportunities to see God at work in your life. I promise you. When you're putting it on you, you're going to start comparing what you're doing to what other people are doing. And when you start comparing, you're going to start competing, and not in a healthy way. And when that competition happens, it will destroy the community. We have to be believers resting in the same grace from the same God, living in the same freedom that He has given us. And when we can do that, we can show the world who Jesus is. We can show them a family that is truly united by one Spirit. So you've been set free today. You don't have to keep trying to earn a place at the table, because your place has already been secured by Jesus.